you're battling the algorithm. You're penalized if you post links in your Instagram stories. Your goal is to push people off the platform as a business owner. Instagram doesn't like that. So why are you going to put your energy into a platform that literally makes it hard for you as a business owner?
Andria Singletary is a wife, mom of two, and a visibility strategist for mom business owners. On her podcast, Marketing Without Socials for Moms, she talks about all things motherhood and business related. Her biggest passion is helping other moms build businesses that fit their current season of life, because life as a mom is ever changing and finding what aligns with you is key. She takes pride in helping her clients succeed and grow their clientele off social media through podcasting and collaborations so they can spend less time on their phones and more time with their littles. Welcome to Coffee and SEO, where we sit down for a coffee hour together and simplify SEO, making it super approachable for your business. I'm Taylor, your host and the founder of Aligned SEO. And at Aligned SEO, we specialize in helping photographers, creatives, and service providers get visible online and reach their dream clients through holistic SEO strategies. Whether you're looking to increase your Google rankings, attract more dream clients, or just make sense of SEO, I will be your SEO guide and bestie. So let's simplify SEO, align it with your goals, and get your website working just as hard as you do so you can get back to doing what you love. So Andrea, I'm super excited to have you on and chat a little bit about your expertise in this. I'd love to just start with hearing a little bit more about you and your journey to becoming a visibility strategist.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. As Taylor said, my name is Andria Singletary. A little bit about me. I'm a wife, a mom of two. My kids are 4 and 2 at the time of this recording, and I'm a visibility strategist for moms. And so I didn't start off in this space. When I first started my business, I started it back in 2021. Funny story, I was pregnant when I started my business. So my son was 1 and I was pregnant with my daughter, and I had the bright idea to start an online business. It was an extreme sport, at least it felt like it, trying to get everything going. But I started out as a virtual assistant, and I think I went that route just because I wanted to try out different things. Like, I had been doing my research and I knew there was like so much you can do in the online space, and I wasn't quite sure what direction I wanted to go in. So I did everything from social media management to blog copywriting, web design, general admin. I did it all essentially, except for bookkeeping. I was not going to
Mm.
mess with numbers. And I quickly discovered that I hated social media management. So I stopped offering that as soon as possible.
Okay.
But I went with that. And then as I got closer to my due date with my daughter, I realized that I couldn't keep going like that. Like, I was going to transition to a mom of two. I was going to have two under two. And there was no way I was going to have the capacity to keep up with the amount of work I was doing. And so I switched gears and I pivoted into podcast management. And I chose to go that route because I could edit podcasts at any time of the day. My daughter wakes up for a feeding at midnight. Hey, I can edit a podcast episode while she's nursing. So I actually did a course on podcast management, completed the course literally a week before I went into labor.
Oh,
And
wow.
I made that transition. I notified my clients, and actually had a one client continue with me because she had a podcast and she just handed it off to me and everything. So I was able to quickly make that shift into podcast management and absolutely loved it. But one of the things that I really noticed with the women I was supporting was that their podcast wasn't really part of their business. It was like this separate thing that they did, and it wasn't helping grow their business. And so I really kind of made it my mission to help female entrepreneurs really connect their podcast to their business, really leverage their podcast as part of their visibility, marketing, and sales. And so, really building out this podcast sales funnel, so to speak, so that way they're bringing in new leads, nurturing these leads, and converting them all from their podcast. And so I did that for a bit. And then in 2023, we just had a lot of back to back stuff happen within my family. My daughter had a seizure. And then, like a month after that, my son was diagnosed with autism. And
Oh, wow.
so, like, my season of life changed. My kids
Mhm.
needed me even more. And so, I had to step back from doing more of the done for you services. And so, I pivoted into more of this, like, coaching slash strategist space. And so, really working with clients in really building their businesses in a way that supported their season of life. And a big part of that was not relying on social media to grow their businesses. Just from my own experience, and then just even the clients I work with, so many of them were just burnt out on social media. They were drained, they were tired of churning out so much content
Mhm.
just to generate any number of leads, just to sign clients. And so I really supported them in finding a different way, whether that was through podcasting or through collaborations. And so last year, I finally stepped into the role of visibility strategist because that's essentially what I was doing.
Mhm.
I was helping them generate leads and create brand awareness and get their name out there without relying on social media. And so, yeah, last year I launched my membership called the Social Media Detox Club, where we focus on visibility and lead generation outside of social media, and have even launched a group program for podcasting and developing a strategy for your podcast. And so, yeah, that's kind of like how I got to where I am now.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing more about your journey. You've had quite a journey to get to where
Yes.
you're at. I mean, from starting in virtual assisting and like getting your hands in like all these different types of marketing and assisting and all the business systems, and then refining that into podcast editing, which you've got your own podcast, so that makes so much sense. I mean, you have a lot of experience in that. And then out of necessity, needing to kind of pivot, which that's always so hard to do, especially when life makes it so that you don't have much of a choice. But I think I resonate so much with your story, and I think a lot of people will too, on this constantly trying to just get more time back. Like I think
Mhm.
most of us running our businesses, like we're always strapped for time. And so I love that instead of focusing so much on that social media hamster wheel, you help people expand beyond that and be a little bit creative and find other ways to market that aren't going to just keep sucking time.
Yes.
So tell me more about why or how you found that Instagram is maybe not always the best place for visibility and marketing in this upcoming year. Why maybe it shouldn't be the main platform.
Yeah. So one of the things we can just see in the online space in general is that people are burnt out from Instagram. A lot of people are either going as far as to delete their Instagram, or
Hmm.
they're limiting the time they're spending on Instagram. I've talked to many people where they've deleted the app from their phone and they only check it when they get on their computer. And so if your people aren't actively engaging on Instagram, why are you going to keep showing up there a lot? You know,
Hmm.
it's not the best place to put your energy, put your focus, put your efforts in. But the other thing is kind of like how we talked about on our podcast. As business owners, we're not just trying to generate any lead. We want to generate quality leads. We want to attract those people who are ready to invest. And
Mm-hmm.
so someone who is scrolling Instagram, they're doom scrolling, they may not be necessarily ready to invest. They may not even necessarily realize they have a specific problem. Yeah, your content captured their attention, but they're not necessarily in that stage of where they're ready to do something about their problem versus the person who is, searching Google or even searching like the podcast listening apps, or someone who is signing up to attend like virtual summits on a specific topic. Those people are seeking solutions right now. Those people are the ones who are ready to invest right now. And so I think that as a business owner, just really one, protecting your mental peace and really being wise about where you're putting your efforts, it makes the most sense to focus on platforms that are really going to give you the highest return, are really going to bring in those quality leads. So that
Mm-hmm.
way you aren't just throwing out so much content. And then you reach this point where you're like, I don't have anything else to talk about, or I'm tired of creating these graphics. And then you just stop showing up completely.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the things that I've really seen with the clients that I've worked with when they start focusing on visibility, like through collaborations or with their podcasts, the pressure is taken off of them and social media becomes fun again. They know
Mm.
that they don't have to post all the time, but when they do show up, they actually enjoy it. They do it because they want to, but they're not stressed or worried about generating leads because they have these other avenues that are working for them. And so that I would say that is the biggest thing
Mm-hmm.
like this year. You can't really limit you're limiting your reach and your impact when you focus solely on social media. And the reality is that your people aren't only on social media, but we also have found out that our content is only pushed out to about 10% of our followers. Then you're battling the algorithm. You're penalized if you post links in your Instagram stories. So why are you going to put your energy into a platform that literally makes it hard for you as a business owner? It's really great for connecting. Like I love Instagram for DMs. Like that is literally the only thing I really use it for is for DMs. But outside of that, like your goal is to push people off the platform as a business owner.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram doesn't like that. So you do not want to put all of your efforts or make it your main platform because it's not going to work in your favor. So really looking at other creative ways that you can get out there, but in ways that aren't going to require a lot of your time or your energy. Because that's
Mm-hmm.
the other thing with Instagram. Like you have to feed it content in order to stay relevant, so to speak. And so there's other ways, there's better ways that are better for you, especially your time is limited, your capacity is limited. And so really leaning into those other ways of doing things.
Hmm. Wow, wow. I think there was a sobering moment for me in what you just said there of like our goal as business owners with social media is to push people out to like our websites to take action, to sign up for calls, and Instagram doesn't like that. It wants to keep everybody on the platform for as long as possible. I had not even realized that, but that's so true. Instagram's algorithm doesn't really it just doesn't align with our business goals, and that makes it like we're going against the grain by trying to use it to market our businesses and push people off of the platform. Wow, that is so true. I also loved what you said there. I think keyword being like we shouldn't rely solely on Instagram. Maybe for some people it's not about like ditching Instagram altogether, but making Instagram a place where you can have fun with it every now and then. And when you do post, it's intentional. I think maybe the issue is when we rely solely on
Yeah.
Instagram to like keep our business going. That's the part that I think feels hopeless and dysfunctional when we are so anxious that we feel like we have to keep posting in order for our doors to stay open. Like that's such a hard feeling. So I love what you said that there's other opportunities, potentially better opportunities to market, like collaborations and podcasts and things like that. which kind of leads me to my next question of what is the best way, in your opinion, to market through a podcast? Would you recommend that a lot of businesses start their own podcast, or would you recommend starting with collaborating and being a guest speaker, or both?
Yeah, so when it comes to, when should you start a podcast? I have a few things that I believe you should have in place first. So one, you should be clear on who you're serving and how you're serving them, and then having those offers that are validated. So offers in which you've successfully, signed clients into, it's a solid offer, it's an offer that your people want. And as long as you have those things in place, the next thing would be is just really looking at your capacity. Because I'm not gonna lie, if you're managing your podcast yourself, it is a time commitment.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I've been in a podcasting space for a couple of years now, and I have my systems down, and I've learned how to streamline the process, but it
Mm-hmm.
takes time to get there. So if you're not outsourcing the editing and the production of your podcast, just know it does take time, but it doesn't have to be perfect. I've told clients, you know what, I don't care if you record on your phone. If that's what you need to do to get it done, then get it done. But it can be a very powerful way to generate leads for your business and nurture your audience and convert them into your
Mm-hmm.
offers. So one of the things that I teach my podcasting clients is how to create a podcast sales funnel. And so, really creating content that moves people along each stage of the funnel. So, you have the top of the funnel, which is the awareness stage. So, really looking at, okay, what type of content do I need to create to generate leads? What kind of content do I need to create to attract those ready to invest clients? So I have this concept of what I like to call a podcast resource library. So these are your FAQ questions. So those questions that you get asked all the time by potential clients. And so you want to create content around those questions. And this when you see someone, say you're scrolling on threads or you're scrolling in a Facebook group, and someone asks a question and you have a podcast episode on it, you can refer them to that podcast episode. Or when someone is searching Google that for that specific question and your podcast episode comes up. So there's two parts to it. You're creating that content, but you're also leveraging SEO,
Mm-hmm.
because when you think about it, people who are searching in Google, they are in that awareness stage. They're searching for someone to solve that specific problem. And so you want to make sure you're that person that comes up for them. So creating that content and leveraging that SEO for the first stage. Then you have the middle of the funnel. This is where they're evaluating and this is where they're engaging. And so this is where you want to create that content that really helps them to start to see that you are the person that has the solution to their problem. So you may create content around client stories or even interviewing your clients on your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
This is where you'll also share your own story, your brand story, because the reality is that we were where our ideal person was at some point, and so now we're helping them to get to where we are. So
Mm-hmm.
infusing that storytelling and everything, but also you want to drive them to other pieces of content. So that may look like driving them to your email list where you can nurture them further and connect with them further. This may look like driving them to sending you a DM on Instagram so you can
Mm-hmm.
have that one-on-one conversation and everything. And then you have the bottom of the funnel. This is where they're in that decision stage. This is where they're like, okay, I'm ready to invest. But now they're being hit with some objections. Now they're going do I
Mm-hmm.
really need this? Do I have the time for this? So this is where you're going to create content around those objections. This is where you're going to create content sharing stories about clients who were feeling the same way that they were, and then sharing how your offer creates the solution, how your offer solves that specific objection that they're currently, going back and forth in their mind with. So this was like a very condensed version
I love
of
it.
that, but you really looking at like, I mean, we create funnels for everything, right? We create
Hmm.
it for our emails. People even create funnels for their Instagram content. You can apply that same strategy to your podcast. So, really looking at what type of content you're creating that's going to meet people at each stage of the
Hmm.
funnel and making sure you're selling in your podcast. That's the biggest thing there,
Yeah.
is really selling your offers in your podcast and everything. But your podcast literally can work for you. And I think the amazing thing about it is that it's evergreen content. And so someone can find your podcast episode that you published months, even years
Hmm.
ago, and it will convert them. I have this happen with my podcast all the time. Like I always know when somebody is about to convert in my offers because they go and they download almost all the episodes, and I'm almost 230 episodes in. So,
They're
and
committed.
yeah, and so within a week or two of them binging the podcast, that's when I get a notification. Either they've booked a consultation or they've signed up for one of my offers. And it can be that simple. Like it continues to work for you. And so
Hmm.
that's the other side of it. It's like your podcast content continues to work for you because it is evergreen.
Hmm.
Instagram content, it dies within 24, 48 hours. So really looking at what is more sustainable, and podcasting is more sustainable. So that's like the first part of the question. I know we're talking about collaborations too. And so I would say like if you're choosing between what to start with, collaborations or podcasting, I always look at like what is your current capacity. So if you're not quite in the space yet where you have the time to focus on podcasting, I would say collaborations are a great way to go. The type of collaborations I'm referring to are podcast guesting, speaking engagements. So, like speaking at virtual summits and conferences, or locally, like looking at whatever networking events are available and if you can speak at it. And then participating in bundles. And if you're not familiar with what bundles are, essentially you contribute a high resource, like a high value resource. You offer it for free. And so you collaborate with a bunch of other business owners. People can sign up and grab your resource and they join your email list. But with collaborations, it's not you creating everything, so to speak. So, like,
Hmm.
for instance, with me guesting on your podcast, I don't have to edit this episode. Like, you get to handle all of that, And so, and you've already built the audience here. And that's the same thing with like bundles and speaking engagements. You are getting in front of already established audiences.
Hmm.
So it takes that pressure off of you for like trying to find the people, so to speak. And so you just have to do your part. Like I just had to come and be prepared to answer these questions here, for a virtual summit. If you're doing like the pre-recorded option, you just put together your presentation, record it, and then submit it to the host, and they handle everything else. Bundles, it's you, having like setting up your checkout page for the resource, setting up your welcome sequence, and that's it. Like you do promote the collaborations, but it's not a lot on your part.
Hmm.
The clients that I work with inside of my membership, they participate on average 2 to 3 collaborations per month, and they generate a minimum of 50 new leads just from 2 to 3 collaborations per
Wow.
month. It's super low effort.
Hmm.
And so just kind of really looking at the season of life you're in and looking at what your capacity is. That's how I would go about deciding. Now, if you have the capacity to do both, I highly recommend doing both. It's that expands your reach and it helps you to connect with more people who need your services, who need your
Hmm.
expertise and everything.
Yes, yes, I love that. Those were really incredible tips, and I think just shows there's opportunities out there
Mhm.
outside of social media and even just in the world of podcasting and speaking and audience sharing. Like there are so many opportunities. And I think what you said there of evaluating capacity is
Mhm.
the determining factor to, which opportunities to take and at what time. I really love that. Those were some really great ideas. So, question for, I work with a lot of creatives and photographers and service providers. I'm curious, like, if you have any ideas on, like, say, a photographer wants to do some audience sharing or
Mhm.
start a podcast. Do you have any recommendations for, what sort of topics they should cover or what sort of opportunities they should be looking for?
Yeah, so for the topics, that's just going to depend on who your audience is. Because even with photographers, like you
Hmm.
have your wedding photographers, you have like your newborn and maternity photographers. So, really looking at who your audience is and what is their need right now, what is
Hmm.
their problem. One of my clients who's part of the membership, she's a photographer. And so she was actually asking for ideas of like what type of resources she could create for bundles. And so I gave her an idea because I know she works with like doing family
Hmm.
photos and stuff. And so I told her, I was like, I know for me as a mom myself, I'm always like, okay, how do I actually get my kids to cooperate? Like they're really little, very antsy. And so I told her, I was like, if you created a guide that like walked me through some things that I could do to kind of prepare, I would download that. Like I would want that. So really looking at what are some things that typically come up when you're working with clients, like again, kind of going back to those frequently asked
Hmm.
questions and creating a resource around that. And you can, participate in bundles. Now, I know with photography, it's a little bit different, especially like if you stick to like local areas and stuff. And so looking at locally, like you don't necessarily have to guest on a podcast, but what about like a local radio station?
Hmm.
They love interviewing entrepreneurs, especially like if you're doing something big or something different. So even looking at how can you network locally? How can you, participate in events locally? I have another client who she actually kind of started her own thing locally. She's based out in Chicago. And so she's created like a community for moms, but she connected with other local businesses, like partnering with them. So not
Hmm.
only is she getting exposure, but they're allowing her to host the events at their facilities and they're getting that exposure too. So
Hmm.
really just thinking outside of the box, like how can you collaborate with the people in your community, especially if you serve a similar audience. I have lots of these examples,
I
but
love this.
one more example, a client I had, she is a former STEM teacher and coaches other STEM teachers. And so she wanted to start hosting like STEM classes for the kids in the community. So she partnered with a coffee shop. And so she hosts the STEM classes, and then the parents are sitting in the coffee shop drinking coffee. So she's making money from hosting
Mm.
these STEM classes, and then the coffee shop is getting new customers. So even something as simple as
Hmm.
that, like as a photographer, maybe you did partner with some type of coffee shop and you did branding shoots there. And I'm saying this
Hmm.
because one of my branding shoots was done at a coffee shop.
Oh, that's awesome.
So like you're just really thinking outside of the box
Mhm.
and again looking at who your target audience is and partnering with other business owners who have a similar target audience as you.
I really love those ideas. And I think at the
Yeah.
heart of it is like, well, serving your ideal client and trying to be as
Hmm.
helpful and valuable as possible. But I love this idea of like sharing audiences and mutually benefit, everybody involved and really building a community, going out there
Hmm.
into the community and like, seeing how you can pull other businesses in and benefit everybody. I really, really love that. I think we need
Yeah.
more of that in
Yes.
2025 for
I
sure.
agree.
So when it
Yeah.
comes to, for example, like you mentioned, evergreen content
Mhm.
or long form content, why do you think that this should be a part of business owners' marketing strategies?
I feel like evergreen content or long form content is one of those things that you have to have because life happens to all of us as business owners. We all go through something, whether that's losing a loved one, getting sick, anything can happen. And so when those situations happen, when life is lifing, we have to step back. And the first thing that always drops off is our visibility. We stop showing up. We stop showing up on socials. We stop emailing our list. And so when you have that long form content, whether it's a blog, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a YouTube channel, that can continue to work for you in the background because
Hmm.
people are still searching things. And so as long as you're leveraging SEO for each of those platforms, people can still find you. You can still generate leads. You can still have people, join your email list, opt into your offers and different things like that. And so I would say like that is like the number one reason why as a business owner, you need to have that long form content because life happens to all of us. It doesn't matter who you are.
Hmm.
And so just having something that you can fall back on when you really can't show up in the way that you normally do. I would say
Hmm.
that is the biggest reason why like you need that. But also with long form content, you can be longer winded, so to speak, in your content. You're not limited to having to like capture people's attention immediately and hold
Hmm.
it for 10 seconds and whatnot. People who listen to podcasts, it can become a part of their daily routine, so to speak.
Hmm.
So, to give an example, I have a podcast listener who she shared with me that she kind of saves up my episodes for when she's going to a networking event and she listens to the episodes on her
Hmm.
way to and from the networking event. I think it takes her like an hour to get there, an hour back. But like I become a part of her routine, right? Like I'm part of, she's like, okay, I got a networking event. Let me binge Andrea's podcast. So really becoming part of that routine, but
Hmm.
also like, people who are reading blogs, people who are listening to podcast episodes or watching YouTube videos, they're able to sustain their attention, right? They're able to
Hmm.
tune in for longer periods of time. They're not just scrolling, but
Hmm.
also they really get to know you, right? They really get to know your personality, really connect with you and really see why you are the expert, why you are the person they should be working with. And so I feel like it does a better job and a somewhat quicker job of nurturing your audience and
Hmm.
building that trust.
That is so true. I think about someone, even myself, who's sitting
Yeah.
down to like read a blog article or listen to a podcast. My mentality is so different than when I'm just doom scrolling on social
Hmm.
media, because I do that too. But yeah, sitting down and really wanting to like glean information and value from a piece of long form content. That's what I think about. There definitely is a need for that evergreen content. And the other thing that came to mind too is that what you described of like when life happens, because it happens to all of us at very inconvenient times sometimes that we can't
Yes.
control. The real freedom comes from this, from having systems in place that can continue the business without and the traction without us having to be there all the time. So I think that is the beauty in long form content and evergreen content. So I love that. This was all so, I think, such an interesting conversation that's much needed, especially this year. I think we're all just so burnt out from social media and trying to do
Mhm.
everything. So I think this is just so valuable. This is going to be so valuable for a lot of my listeners. For listeners who might want to learn more about you or your services, can you like just very briefly share about some of your offers?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned earlier, I have my membership. It's called the Social Media Detox Club. And this is your membership. Like, if you really want to focus on increasing your visibility and generating new leads monthly and doing it in a sustainable way, this membership is for you. Um, what I love about this membership is that there's such a diverse group of women inside. I have
Mm.
everything from parenting coaches to photographers to bookkeepers to web designers, copywriters. It's just such a wide mix of people. And it's really an amazing community because it's not just getting my eyes on your stuff and supporting you with visibility. You get the feedback and insights from so many other people in different areas of expertise.
Hmm.
So that's one of my offers. And then if you really are serious about podcasting and doing it in a way where it supports your business, you can work with me one-on-one in podcast with strategy. So it's a mix of coaching and consulting. And essentially, I help you build out that podcast sales funnel, even mapping out the content. I also support you with doing keyword research,
Hmm.
understanding your podcast analytics, and really creating a podcast that is a client magnet that brings in those quality leads. So those are two of the ways you can work with me. And then I have my own podcast, Marketing Without Socials for Moms. Even if you're not a mom, there's a lot that you can get from the podcast. But we have conversations kind of like this one, but everything from talking about podcasting to collaborations, as well as I have lots of different experts who can really teach you how to grow your business outside of social media. So, yeah, those are the different ways you can work with me. And you can learn more about all of that at my website, mamaturnmompreneur.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I'll definitely be binging your podcast after this as well.
Awesome.
And then I know you also have a private podcast called Make Social
Yes.
Media Optional.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit more about that one.
Yeah, so for the make social media optional, I really walk you through how to leverage email marketing, podcasting, and collaboration. So there are
Mm.
bite-sized episodes, and really just to kind of give you a taste of what is possible outside of social media, like how
Mhm.
you really can build a business that isn't reliant on social media, that truly makes social media optional. So it's my free private podcast. You can definitely download that, binge the episodes, and you'll get a lot out of it.
Awesome. Thank you. And I will link everything below, including Andrea's website, the private podcast link, her social medias, everything. So you can go and connect with her there. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for chatting with me. I had so much fun and learned a lot from you too. And I really appreciate you being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Me too. Thank you. And thank you all for listening. I will see you all in the next episode.